even exist off of. It really had nothing. It had talented actors and actresses, but not in the way of Ross Lynch, because I didn't see any talented acting coming from Ross Lynch like I did Laura Morano, who has ultimately, to me, a more promising future as an actress. We saw that in Disney's Bad Hair Day, which was recently released with Lee Allen Baker as one of the co-stars of that movie. Very interesting concept for Laura Morano to come off of and rebound off the series finale of Austin Alley with. So I think there is more of a promising future ultimately for Laura Morano than there ever was for Ross Lynch. Not to say they didn't have great chemistry on Austin Alley, because they really did, like many Disney stars did in the way of Sabrina Carpenter's and Roland Blanchard. They have very promising futures, but musically, when you compare careers of, say, Sabrina Carpenter and Ross Lynch, I may not be the only one who feels this way, or then again, I might probably be the only one who feels this way, but there's really no comparison in music between Sabrina Carpenter and Ross Lynch, and that's probably why I was playing the card of seemingly being a sexist towards the Disney stars in the way of females and males, and playing the favorite towards the females, because I thought ultimately they were putting out far more superior female talents than they ever were males. Not to say they weren't putting out talented males, it's just that the females were overshadowing what the males were doing on Disney, and I think that people like Sabrina Carpenter and Ross Lynch, there's really no comparison between those two. There may be a bit of a comparison between, say, Ross Lynch and Dove Cameron, but when you compare someone like Ross Lynch and Sabrina Carpenter, there's really no comparison. It pales in comparison, and Sabrina Carpenter really does circles around Ross Lynch. So, at the end of the day, there's really a long way to go for Ross Lynch for, coming off this series finale of Austin Alley, which a lot of people probably feel has more promise than what I do, and I definitely appreciate the diversity coming from all of you. Some of you feel that Ross Lynch has a more promising future than I think and foresee for him in R5, and some of you probably may agree with me and say, Ross Lynch doesn't seem to have that promising of a future, but that's what makes the world go round, the diversity coming from all these people. And like I said, I may have more haters by the time I publish this video blog, but I just could never really get in out of Ross Lynch. Now, there were a few songs that Ross Lynch may have written for Austin and Alley and R5 that I really appreciated, because, Austin and Alley was a show, obviously, that existed off of the music, so, I grew an appreciation for the music that was written specifically for Austin and Alley, and R5 does have an exceptionally few good songs out there written off the script of Austin and Alley that Ross Lynch had a hand in. So obviously, 3 or 4 songs maybe R5 had I could get into, but when you compare music that Disney's putting out in comparison to what people like Ross Lynch are putting out outside of it, even past stars like Demi Lovato and Selena Gomez, who are power trips right now with entertainment, there's really no comparison. Obviously, I'm going to favor a Demi and a Selena over someone like a Ross Lynch. You're never going to see the day when I'm going to prefer Ross Lynch's music over the music of a Demi Lovato, who could really hit those high notes. Ross Lynch still has difficulty, in my opinion, hitting those high notes. He does it on times, but he never does it enough. And I just wish Ross was far more creative than what he is right now. He's not really standing up for anything, musically or being an actor. And so many people think he has this really promising future, which has yet to be seen. He still has a lot to prove to me. And like I said, he still has a long way to go. And I think that ultimately, at the end of the day, more Disney stars have gone further and come further in a short period of time than Ross Lynch ever has, because there still is a lot of unanswered questions about Ross Lynch's future that we may go a long time before we do get the answers to them. He still has a lot to prove, and like I said, he still has a long way to go and a lot of growing up to do, because there was a lot of immaturity that I saw from Ross Lynch on Austin and Alley, and it was very easy to see that. How could you go without recognizing and noticing the immaturity that we saw from Ross Lynch? He was really immature, and he was really putting himself out there in a way that I could never remember seeing a Disney star ever do. So I think there's more promise at the end of the day for all these Disney stars that are in a category way beyond and higher up there than Ross Lynch ever was. So there is still a lot of proving to do and a lot of growing up for Ross Lynch. He doesn't sound like a little boy, I will give him that. He sounds pretty, mature in the way he writes his music and how he wants to be perceived by his fans. I will give him the benefit of the doubt for that. But the way he puts himself out there off the microphone, there still is a lot of growing up and a lot of room for him to do that in the very near future. I could see him growing up in the future, but, it's not really showing through right now with everything that he's done. I will give the writers of Austin and Alley a tremendous amount of credit, because a lot of people thought thought that show wasn't going to exist and last as long as what it did, but it continued to thrive off the music. And apart from that, you know, you had Ross Lynch's appearance in Teen Beaches 1 and 2. That was great. And he also had a lot of appearances for Disney outside of the production of Austin and Ally, and had so much going on with R5 with their tours. They've got a couple of tour dates lined up. For more information on that, you can go to their Facebook fan page, which I have subscribed to, and you can follow them on Twitter. And you can go to the official website of R5 too, which you can also get through Google for information on upcoming tour dates. They have a lot of things going on musically, and that's why I keep falling back and going back to the music of R5, because that's really what Ross Lynch has to pride himself on, the success that he's had with the music, because really he hasn't had that much success with anything. If you look at the numbers, in terms of numbers on his Facebook fan page and followers he has on Twitter and Google+, they are up there in the millions. That's to be expected, and it goes back to how Disney has done a great job promoting their stars in recent years. If not for the promotional package that Disney puts behind these stars, you know, you kind of got to question, where would they be? Where would people like Rowan Blanchard and Sabrina Carpenter have ended up if not for the promotion of Disney? I think Disney does a great job promoting these stars for both males and females, and obviously it has benefited Ross Lynch and R5. Obviously R5 is getting fame for Ross Lynch and his success with Disney, which you would expect for them to do, and they're going to continue to do that and thrive for Ross Lynch's reputation from Disney. But again, you know, it all goes back to how Disney has always done a great job promoting their stars, and they're going to continue to do that, and that's why they're going to keep putting out and putting out and putting out in the way of a TV series, in the way of a #1 hit, or in the way of an actress or an actor. And I think actresses are really what Disney is thriving off of right now. When you look at people in terms of Peyton List, Dove Cameron, Olivia Holt, who I am really high on, thinking about her all the time, and I do apologize for not talking about these stars as much as what I probably should be talking about them in the way of Peyton List and Olivia Holt, because I'm always putting over people like Dove Cameron and most recently Sabrina Carpenter. I've kind of become the biggest Sabrina Carpenter fan in the world, as I have an Olivia Holt fan, but I am more of a Sabrina Carpenter fan these days than I ever have been of an Olivia Holt. That's why I'm really apologetic towards all the Olivia Holt fans out there who I do know exist, who recognize her for being an actress, very talented, and a very great singer. With all the videos she's putting out on Vivo for Disney Nature's Beers, she had a song, Carry On. That's a great example of how good of a singer Olivia Holt is. Some of her Christmas music I heard over the holidays was great stuff coming from her. And the theme song of Disney's I Didn't Do It is a great way of putting in perspective what that show is really all about and what the futures have in store for the cast of that show, which is really Disney's answer to So Random from a number of years ago, starring Demi Lovato, Tiffany Thornton, and Doug Basham. So there's a lot that goes with the future of someone like an Olivia Holt and someone like a Peyton List, who I will be talking about more on this show as time goes on. I can't say that I'll be talking more about Ross Lynch until they put out, in the way of musically, either in the way of a solo EP or album for Ross Lynch or an album from R5, which is to be expected. But, you know, obviously Disney has done a great job putting them out there, because the fan page of R5 and Ross Lynch have both millions of fans and followers on Twitter and Google+, which is to be expected. Again, you know, going back to how Disney has always done a great way promoting them, and they will continue to do over the years, no matter who they're putting out and distributing for us to really fall in love with. Yeah, Disney may tell us who to love, but they do a great job in telling us who to love and who to receive very, you know, respectfully, which a lot of fans are doing. But the thing is about Ross Lynch is, I just could never get into his music. You know, like I said, you know, 3 or 4 songs either from him in the way of a single, a solo song, or a song from R5. Maybe I would have got into, but the thing is, you know, I never really liked 10 R5 songs. If I did like 5 or 6, I was lucky to have liked those many. But I could never tell you that I liked 10 or 15 songs of an R5 group in the way that I did Demi Lovato, because every song Demi Lovato or Selena Gomez would put out there as an example, you know, I really got into and I really appreciated. I appreciated everything that Demi Lovato and Selena Gomez wrote about, more so than I ever have a Justin Bieber or a Ross Lynch, and that kind of puts you in mind of how I felt about Justin Bieber, or at least should put you in mind of how I felt about Justin Bieber and the way that he was putting out his music, how out of control he became, and how he treated Selena Gomez and got away with treating Selena Gomez the way that he did. You know, all the death threats that Selena Gomez was receiving on Twitter, so many people threatening to kill her from a couple of years ago. I remember that. You know, I was so shocked over how girls had reacted towards Selena Gomez being with Justin Bieber. If you hurt him, I'll kill you. You know, those tweets on Twitter were completely unnecessary. It didn't need to be happening the way that it did. So, how I feel about Ross Lynch in a lot of ways should put you in mind of how I felt about Justin Bieber from a few years ago. Justin has unquestionably turned his life around with redeeming qualities, finally shining through with his new album Purpose and all these songs like Love Yourself and What Do You Mean. Everybody talking about Justin in a more promising way than they were 2 or 3 years ago, lifting the band off him on syndicated radio, so hopefully promising things are in store for him. And I would like to say the same thing about Ross Lynch, but until he puts out in the way of music or in the way of being an actor and showing that he really is multi-talented like he was being perceived to have been, that's when I will choose to give Ross Lynch more credit than what I am right now, because he still has a long way to go and a lot of proving to be done. But that's not to say that he will go the distance and he will go that long way. That still remains to be seen from him, because there's a lot of growing up for him to do. He has to prove to me that he's more mature and he really belongs in the position entertainment-wise than he's in right now. And I think that, he will prove that in time, but he still has a long way to go. I invite you to get in on the conversation. You can leave me a comment in the video blog at Jonathan Clarke 22, which you can also share on your Facebook and Twitter. I can't tell you guys enough how much I appreciate you sharing my content and letting this show be heard by more people than it ever has before. You can also get in touch with me on my Facebook page at HEW Entertainment. You can also share the video on there as well. And on Google Plus, we are at the same, HEW Entertainment, so you can get in on the conversation in those ways. And like I said, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It's Jonathan Clarke Reviews Ross Lynch, and hopefully you will take something away very positively from this video blog. Again, it may remind you of how I felt about Justin Bieber from a few years ago, but it is what it is. It's Jonathan Clarke Reviews Ross Lynch, and I thank you for joining me on this 1st of March 2016. March Madness is definitely in the air, and I will talk to you again next week. Like what you hear? Tell us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
Let's Marvin Gaye and get it on. You got the healing that I want, just like they say in the song, till the dawn. Let's Marvin Gaye and get it on. We got this king size to ourselves, don't have to share with no one else. Don't keep your secrets to yourself. It's Kama Sutra show and tell.